Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we really get into all things cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Today, we're doing a deep dive on the top cybersecurity news of the week. No, curated, just like a CybersecurityHQ newsletter,
Oh, right.
which I hear is read by over 70,000 cybersecurity professionals every week.
That's a lot of people. Cybersecurity HQ is, yeah, they're a great resource for professionals to stay up to date, right?
Yeah.
On the latest, threats and vulnerabilities. And this week's news, well, let me tell you, it's especially interesting.
You got that right.
With some major stories about election security, AI advancements. Oh, and we've got some news on a new wave of those sophisticated phishing attacks.
Let's just jump right in.
Sounds good.
Our top story this week is 2024 election security under scrutiny, right? With the U.S. presidential election just days away, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the FBI, and CIA, they've issued a joint statement outlining their concerns about disinformation campaigns, targeting voters.
Absolutely. And they specifically mention the spread of fake claims about election fraud down in Arizona,
Yeah.
including, those accusations of fake ballots being created to favor Vice President Kamala Harris. But of course, the Arizona Secretary of State has publicly refuted these claims,
Yes.
emphasizing, the security and the integrity of their voting systems.
And, it's not just that online misinformation. The FBI, they've also issued a warning about this wave of fake bomb threats that are being emailed to polling stations all over the country.
Right. And these emails, well, they seem to be coming from Russian domains. And they've already caused a bunch of problems, forcing evacuations, extended voting hours at multiple polling places, Fulton County, Georgia, just one example.
Yeah.
It highlights the real impact these tactics are having, not just in terms of sowing discord, but also by creating those physical disruptions and undermining public trust. Really scary stuff.
Absolutely. Now, let's shift gears for a minute and take a look at a story that's making headlines over in Germany. Germany shields white hats, toughens penalties. That's the headline. So the German government, they've introduced some new draft legislation, right, aimed at protecting those ethical hackers,
Right.
often called white hats, from criminal prosecution.
Yeah.
But while also increasing penalties for those malicious black hat hackers.
Interesting development. It really reflects that growing recognition, of the value that ethical hackers bring to cybersecurity. Because by offering them legal protection, right, for responsible vulnerability disclosure, the German government is encouraging researchers to find those security flaws.
Yeah.
Report them
Yeah.
before those bad actors can exploit them.
Exactly. And that's such a proactive approach.
Yeah.
That could have a ripple effect, I think, across other countries.
Yeah,
Encourage more of that ethical hacking.
for sure.
And contribute to a much more, I think, a more secure digital environment overall. Let's talk about a company that's no stranger to data privacy controversies. Meta, hit with yet another fine, this time by South Korea's Personal Information Protection Commission.
Yeah, Meta fined for data misuse. Again, that's the headline.
Wow.
South Korea's PIPC has fined Meta 21.62 billion won. That's about 15.67 million US dollars for illegally collecting and sharing sensitive personal information without users' consent.
And what's especially concerning is the type of data they were collecting. I mean, this wasn't just, your basic demographic information. They were gathering data on sexual orientation,
Yeah.
religious beliefs,
Yeah.
political affiliation,
Wow.
and then sharing this very sensitive information with thousands of advertisers.
Yeah, this is a serious breach of trust, and it really does raise some questions, about Meta's commitment to user privacy.
Right.
And this isn't an isolated incident, is it? I mean, they were just fined $100 million by the EU
Right.
back in September for similar offenses. And they faced criticism for not securing those inactive accounts, leaving them vulnerable to hijacking.
Let's move on to a topic that's really generating a lot of buzz in
Right.
the tech world.
Yeah.
Anthropic urges immediate action on AI. Anthropic, the company behind that very impressive AI model, Claude, has issued a pretty stark warning about the potential dangers of AI, particularly the rapid pace of advancement in its problem-solving capabilities.
Yeah, and they really highlighted that point, right? By showing the incredible progress that large language models, or LLMs, have made in solving real-world coding tasks. I mean, their own LLM, right, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, is now able to solve 49% of these tasks.
Wow.
Huge jump from just 2% a year ago.
That's a remarkable increase.
It is.
And really underscores their point about, the exponential growth of AI capabilities.
Yeah.
But, they're not just raising the alarm bells, are they?
No, no, no.
They're proposing some concrete steps to mitigate those potential risks.
Exactly. And they're calling for the development and implementation of what they're calling responsible scaling policies, or RSPs for short. These policies, which they've already put in place internally, are designed to assess and mitigate, AI risks as models become more capable.
And it's such a proactive and potentially very influential approach to AI safety. I mean, they're hoping to see it adopted industry-wide, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure.
Now, for a story that's a little closer to home for many of us in the cybersecurity world, CrowdStrike expands in SaaS security space. They're acquiring Adaptive Shield,
Yeah.
an Israeli startup specializing in, well, this is a mouthful, SaaS security posture management, or SSPM, and identity threat detection and response, ITDR. That's a lot.
I know, right? But this is a strategic move by CrowdStrike, to strengthen their position in the rapidly growing cloud security market.
Yeah.
Because with more and more companies adopting SaaS applications, well, securing those environments has become a top priority.
Absolutely. And Adaptive Shield, they bring some really valuable technology to the table, especially in terms of enhancing visibility and control over, all those size settings. Their tools, they allow security teams to identify and address misconfigurations and suspicious activities within SaaS applications.
Right.
And that, reduces the risk of data breaches and those other security incidents.
Yeah, and it's a significant acquisition, right? I mean, it reflects that broader trend of consolidation in the cybersecurity industry. And speaking of CrowdStrike,
Oh, yeah.
they were also in the news this week because they identified a bug in Windows 11 Build 24H2.
Right. The headline is, CrowdStrike, Windows 11 bug causes hangs. But it's not actually a problem with their software, is it?
No, it's not.
It's a bug within the Windows 11 update that causes certain applications to freeze when they're used with CrowdStrike's Falcon sensor software and a specific policy setting.
Right. And CrowdStrike has put in place a temporary solution, right, by disabling its enhanced exploitation visibility prevention policy on the affected hosts.
Yeah.
And they are working with Microsoft to develop a permanent fix.
Right.
It just goes to show you, right, that even the most popular operating systems can have vulnerabilities. And it highlights that importance of collaboration, between the security vendors and the software developers to fix these issues quickly.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to TikTok. Big development regarding TikTok. This one is generating a lot of buzz, especially with the app's, huge popularity.
Yeah, the headline's pretty straightforward. Canada orders TikTok shutdown, citing security. A Canadian government has officially ordered TikTok to cease operations in the country, citing concerns about national security.
Okay.
So this decision, which came after a thorough review by Canada's national security and intelligence officials, is a major escalation of the pressure that TikTok is facing globally. Canada's Minister of Innovation, François-Philippe Champagne, stated that, the government is committed to protecting the privacy and security of Canadians. And this decision, it reflects their assessment of the risks associated with TikTok's data sharing practices and its ties to Beijing.
And this really does align with the growing concerns about TikTok, in other countries too, right? Including the U.S., where officials have given ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, a deadline to divest TikTok or face a potential ban.
It's going to be interesting to see how TikTok responds to all this pressure and what impact it has on its global operations. What's going to happen?
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about Google and Gmail security. In light of all the heightened awareness surrounding election-related cyber threats, Google is taking proactive steps to enhance the security of its email platform, Gmail, which has a massive user base. Over 2.5 billion people worldwide.
That's a lot of people.
It is, making it a prime target, right, for those attackers.
Absolutely. And one of the things they're recommending is for users to create backup Gmail accounts. It's like a fallback option if your main account gets hacked.
Yeah, smart.
Right. That's smart.
They're also really pushing for users to consider, signing up for their Advanced Protection Program, or APP.
Right.
This program it's designed for people who are at a higher risk of of targeted attacks,
Hmm.
like journalists, activists, and political figures.
Yeah.
And it requires them to use, physical security keys
Right.
or hardware tokens to log in,
Yeah.
which makes it a lot harder for hackers to get into their accounts.
And in addition to all of that, Google is reminding users about how important it is to regularly use that security checkup tool, which lets you review device access, safe browsing settings, email forwarding rules, just making sure that you haven't accidentally given someone unauthorized access to your account.
Good advice. Now, in our last story for this part, we've got news about Qualys Inc., a pretty well-known name in the IT security and compliance management space. And it seems they're thinking about a potential sale.
Yeah, the headline is Qualys considers sale amid industry consolidation. And they have confirmed that they're exploring this option after getting a lot of interest from potential buyers.
Really?
Yeah, and this really, it fits with that ongoing trend of consolidation that we're seeing in the cybersecurity industry, right?
Yeah.
Where we're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions as investors look for more comprehensive security solutions.
Qualys' recent surge in their share price definitely makes them an attractive target, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be really interesting to see who ends up acquiring them
Yeah,
and how it affects the industry landscape.
for sure.
That's it for part 1 of our cybersecurity news roundup for the week of November 7th, 2024.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to our deep dive into this week's cybersecurity news. We've got a lot more to cover, so let's jump right back in.
Okay, so this next story is pretty interesting, I think, especially for anyone who's concerned about, keeping those critical infrastructure systems secure. We're seeing a really exciting breakthrough in research coming out of Georgia Tech.
Oh, yeah, that's right. A team of researchers there have developed this new algorithm. They're calling it PLC Hound. And let me tell you, it's a real game changer when it comes to detecting those internet-exposed industrial control systems, the PLCs.
Right, and those PLCs, they're really the backbone, aren't they? It's so many essential services, power grids, water treatment plants, manufacturing facilities. I mean, if those systems are compromised, the consequences could be really bad. But identifying those exposed PLCs has always been a challenge.
And that's exactly where PLC Hound comes in. This algorithm, it uses natural language processing and machine learning to go through huge amounts of data, and it's 37 times more effective than all the previous methods they were using.
Wow, 37 times. That's a huge leap forward. I mean, it really highlights how, those advancements in AI and machine learning can really improve cybersecurity defenses in a big way.
It really does. Now, for a story that reminds us that some threats, well, they just never go away, we're talking about phishing, of course.
Right, phishing, they just keep evolving, this attacks. And this week we saw a pretty clever tactic being used. The headline is, Phishing Evolves, DocuSign Tactic Uncovered. So attackers have found a way to use legitimate DocuSign accounts to send out these fake invoices. They're really preying on that trust that people have in DocuSign. It's a platform that a lot of folks use for secure document signing, transactions, all kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly. So you might get what looks like, a totally legitimate DocuSign email, right? Invoice attached. You might not even think twice.
Click that link, download the file.
And bam, you've just delivered malware straight to your system. Give those attackers access to all your sensitive info. Maybe even let them spread that infection further.
Scary stuff. Really highlights the need to be vigilant, doesn't it? I mean,
Right.
Never let your guard down, even when it seems like those emails or messages are coming from, a source you trust. Always double check, verify everything, especially those payment requests.
Yeah.
And, always double check the sender's address before you, click anything or open anything.
Absolutely. Always double check. And this next story, it's also about exploiting trust, but on a much larger scale. We're talking about the Veal Drive campaign. Cybersecurity firm Hunters uncovered it recently.
So what's so concerning about Veal Drive is that it involves hijacking, legitimate Microsoft services
Yeah.
for malicious purposes, compromising accounts, sending spear phishing messages through Teams, and basically taking advantage of the trust that people have in those platforms to carry out their attacks.
Yeah, once they get a foothold in an organization, these attackers, they can start exploiting other Microsoft services, like SharePoint, OneDrive, things like that. And then they can, steal data, spread malware, cause all sorts of problems.
It's a good reminder that even the most secure platforms out there, they can still be vulnerable. If an attacker gets a hold of a legitimate user account, really underscores the importance of strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, and just carefully managing, the permissions that we give to all these applications and services.
Couldn't agree more. Now, we've got a story here for all the gamers out there. Cyber criminals, they're increasingly targeting gaming communities. With this new malware strain called WinOS 4.0.
Right. WinOS 4.0 malware targets gaming communities. That's the headline. So they're disguising this malware as, game-related stuff like cheat codes or things that are supposed to like boost your performance.
Yeah, they know gamers are always looking for an edge, right?
Right.
And they're using that to their advantage. They're spreading these malicious programs through those channels where gamers hang out, online forums, social media, messaging apps, all of it.
And it's a reminder that cybersecurity, it's not just for work. It's just as important in our downtime, in our leisure activities. Download stuff only from those reputable sources. Be skeptical of anything that seems too good to be true. And of course, keep your security software updated.
Always good advice. Now, let's go back to a major cybersecurity incident that we talked about a bit earlier this year. The Snowflake breaches, you remember those, right? Those breaches that hit all those big names, Ticketmaster, Santander Bank, Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah, I remember those.
Well, there's been a new development in the investigation. They've arrested Alexander Connor Muka, a notorious SIM swapper, and that's shed some light on how these breaches might have happened.
So this Muka guy, he went by a few aliases online, Judish and Waifu, and he was apparently bragging about his SIM swapping exploits on Telegram, which is what led to his arrest.
Talk about careless, right? But this case really highlights the serious threat that those SIM swapping attacks pose. Because if an attacker can get control of your mobile phone number, they can get around multi-factor authentication,
Right.
and get into all your online accounts, bank accounts, cryptocurrency wallets, social media, you name it. So protecting your mobile phone number, it's really crucial. Enable those extra security measures with your mobile provider. Be wary of unsolicited communications, and think about using a physical security key, as an extra layer of protection.
Good advice. So now let's shift gears and talk about Google again. They're making some more efforts to bolster the security of their Gmail platform, which, as we mentioned earlier, is a huge target. Especially during those election cycles.
Right, and this time their focus is on their Advanced Protection Program, or APP.
Right, the APP.
And this program is, it's made for users who are at a higher risk of those targeted attacks. Journalists, activists, political figures, and it makes them use those physical security keys or hardware tokens to log in. So it's a lot harder to, for attackers to compromise their accounts.
Right. Makes sense. Now, for our final story in this segment, let's turn our attention to Qualys Inc. Again, that leading player in the IT security and compliance management market.
Oh yeah, as we mentioned before, they're thinking about a possible sale with all that consolidation going on in the cybersecurity industry, right?
And there's been a new development. Qualys's board of directors, they've reportedly met to talk about a potential acquisition offer.
From Toma Bravo, which is a private equity firm. They've got a pretty strong track record, investing in all these tech companies. Interesting. Sounds like things are moving pretty quickly there. We could be seeing, an acquisition announcement soon. This potential deal, it just shows how much competition there is in the cybersecurity market, and how eager investors are to grab up these companies with those proven solutions and those strong customer bases.
Makes sense. So that wraps up part 2 of our cybersecurity news roundup for this week, November 7th, 2024.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into the top cybersecurity news from this past week. We've got a few more interesting stories to go through before we wrap things up.
Okay, let's get right to it. So this next story, it really highlights that ongoing battle against cyber attacks that are targeting, those industrial control systems, the ICS.
Right, exactly. We saw this new malware strain emerge this week. They're calling it IronNet. The security researchers over at Dragos, that leading ICS cybersecurity firm, they're the ones who discovered this thing. And it looks like it's specifically designed to target and disrupt industrial operations.
And what's really concerning is how sophisticated this IronNet malware is and the potential impact it could have. It seems like it was developed by a pretty well-resourced and skilled group, and it's capable of causing some serious damage to critical infrastructure.
No kidding. This malware, it uses a kind of a multi-stage attack approach. So first, it compromises those IT networks, and then it moves laterally to get access to the operational technology systems. And once it's inside that OT environment, it can do a lot of damage, disrupt processes, manipulate data, even cause physical damage. It's a big deal.
Definitely a wake-up call. It really underscores that growing threat to industrial control systems and how important it is to have strong cybersecurity measures in place to protect those critical assets.
Absolutely. Organizations really need to make ICS security a top priority, implement that strong segmentation between the IT and OT networks, and really invest in those advanced threat detection and response capabilities. Can't afford to skimp on that stuff.
Okay, so let's move on to a story that I think have implications for just about every organization out there, big or small. It's about this new cloud security vulnerability that was discovered by the researchers over at Orca Security.
Oh yeah, that's right. They're calling this one Cloud Hopper, and it affects one of those popular cloud storage services. Could allow attackers to get unauthorized access to all that sensitive data that's stored in the cloud.
And this vulnerability, it comes from a misconfiguration in the service's access controls,
Hmm.
which could allow those attackers to bypass security measures and do all sorts of things, read, modify, or even delete data that's stored in those cloud storage buckets.
Yeah, and what makes this Cloud Hopper thing especially dangerous is that it can be exploited remotely. The attackers don't need any special privileges or credentials. They can just get in.
So Orca Security, they did the right thing. They've disclosed this vulnerability to the cloud provider, and they're working on a patch. But in the meantime, any organization that's using that particular cloud storage service, they should take steps right away. Review their configurations, make sure their data is protected.
Yeah, it's another reminder that those ongoing security assessments are just so crucial, especially in those cloud environments. Organizations need to be proactive, identify and fix those vulnerabilities before the bad guys find them.
Absolutely. So for our final story this week, let's turn our attention to the world of ransomware. Unfortunately, it seems like those attacks are just not going away anytime soon.
Nope, they're not. And this week we saw a pretty disturbing trend emerge. There's this new ransomware group out there. They're calling themselves Shatter Syndicate. And they're not just encrypting data, they're also threatening to leak that sensitive information if their demands aren't met.
It's like a double whammy. And that tactic of double extortion is becoming more and more common these days. Really puts a lot of pressure on those victims to just pay the ransom.
Yeah, they don't really have a lot of options. And this Shadow Syndicate, they've already taken credit for several high-profile attacks. Looks like they're going after organizations in healthcare, finance, government, those sectors where the data is really valuable.
Right. And they're using some pretty sophisticated techniques to get into those networks. Spear phishing campaigns, exploiting vulnerabilities in software, all that stuff. So what can organizations do? I mean, how can they protect themselves against these constantly evolving ransomware threats?
Well, they need to implement a multi-layered security approach. It's not just one thing. Strong email security, vulnerability management, robust data backup, and recovery capabilities, they need to have all those bases covered.
Well, that brings us to the end of our cybersecurity news roundup for this week, November 7th, 2024. It's been a pretty eventful week. Lots of different stories highlighting the fact that the threat landscape is constantly changing, and organizations really need to stay vigilant and proactive when it comes to their cybersecurity efforts.
Couldn't agree more. And hey, if you want to stay up to date on all the latest cybersecurity news, the trends, even job opportunities, you should definitely check out CybersecurityHQ. It's a fantastic online community, tons of resources, including a newsletter that's read by, over 70,000 professionals every week.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the week's top cybersecurity news. Until next time, stay safe out there and stay informed.